Hello, Uggies worldwide. I'm Dave Casler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, here with a review of a 10-meter radio that's designed to take advantage of the wonderful DX conditions that exist right now. 2024, 2025, we're going to be seeing wonderful conditions on 10 meters. The cool thing about this is that as a technician, you can use this radio. Okay, now, this comes from the company called Retevis in China. And what they do is they brand their ham radio oriented equivalent as Ailunce, A-I-L-U-N-C-E. I think it was originally meant to be Alliance, but they got to the point of Ailunce and there it stays. They made an HD1, a very nice DMR rig that is a handheld. And I remember reviewing that. The only objection I had to it was that the display powers on. It must have a backlight in order to work. And once it goes blank, it's blank. You can't see it even in the sun. It was the only issue I had with the radio. Everything else worked fine. So my expectations were a little bit high when I opened this Retevis Ailunce HS4. And that's this radio right here. Now, I've got a lot of things to say about them, and I'm going to flat contradict Ailunce on a couple of them. This is a 10 meter. It only operates on 10 meter, but it operates all modes on 10 meters. And so I'm going to walk you through some of the controls, and then the elephant in the room here is how it's tuned. Because this will not work in a mobile environment, and yet the radio was designed for a mobile environment. Now what they did was they took one of their more successful CB products, which would be 11 meters, and tweaked the firmware and tweaked the hardware and so on, so it would work on 10 meters. Now a lot of the reverse was done when 11 meters first came out. Now the radio has a couple major shortcomings. One, on CW, it will only do straight key mode. There's no keyer built in. For a lot of you, that's no big deal. The other thing that is a big deal is that tuning the radio to a frequency to use involves three knobs. Three knobs. You cannot use this radio in a mobile configuration unless you're going to leave it on just one frequency. Now, there are repeaters on 10 meters up about 29 megahertz, okay? So that you might be able to do if you're doing FM repeaters with this thing. It will do FM. Now, you can set all the usual repeater kind of stuff in here. Now, the problem is that in order to shift frequency between 28 and 29 megahertz, you have to use three different knobs. You cannot do that safely while driving. You just can't. So I do not recommend, in fact, I speak sharply against the idea of using this as a mobile radio. Now, if this is something in your RV that you can play with when you're focused, your full attention on it, then fine, no issue with that. So let's go through what we see. There are a couple things that are minor. I'll point out a couple things that are quite interesting that I'll point out. I will also point out that there is software where you can change either what's in the memory channels or what you have for the various parameters. Let me first go over some notes that I made on this. It's what was a rather versatile CB radio was converted to ham radio with firmware change. Now, the problem with that is that there are some features on here that I guess are useful for CB, but have no place on ham radio. For example, the echo feature here gives a reverb to your voice. That should not be used in a ham radio because it actually decreases the intelligibility of your voice. It is possible. In function settings, you can disable this. I would recommend that. The volume and squelch are on the same knob, so don't hit the squelch accidentally. Normally for HF work, we don't have a squelch. You could turn that up and shut that off if you're expecting a loud call on that frequency. But all radios these days, including my ICOM 7310, do have a squelch. Now they have RF gain and RF power on one knob. That's fine. Now there are a bunch of little buttons up here. This one is the function button. When you push it, you get an F up here, and when you don't, it's down here. So if you look at these other buttons, this is RB, not sure what that is. Noise blanker A&L is right here. You can turn that on. DW, I don't know what that is. If you hit the function, it will get the one just below that. This is BP, lock, and LCD off. I don't know why you would want to turn the LCD off, but maybe sometimes you do. Okay, and down here, without the function key, scan, plus 10 kilohertz, SWR, and ENG. Not sure what that is. If you hit the function, you get an SC list, a high cut, timeout timer, and switching the meter between SWR and power out. Those are the front panel buttons. There are no buttons on the microphone except the switch to transmit, and then it's got a down and an up. These go by channels, not by some kilohertz, and an AQ which can be assigned. Now let's go through some of the controls. First, the thing puts out, I think, close to 20 watts. It works. I know it works because I talked to a Victor Echo 7 up in Canada. I'm in Colorado, and had a nice conversation with him on 10 meters, and that worked out very well. Okay, so it can be done. But now I want to talk about the tuning. First of all, this is a memory channel guide here. But the way they have it fixed in here, if you read here, it goes up by 5 kilohertz each time you turn it. Now, the problem with that is that signals on single sideband will only be 3 kilohertz wide, so it's possible to entirely skip signals. Now, what you would normally do if you want to go through the band, first you have to set the portion of the band that you're interested in. A is the CW, B is 345 to 600, so that's your technician band plus some. Okay, C takes you up higher, D goes up above 29, E and F are up above 29. Now, to tune, of course, we've got it in upper sideband, because that's what we use. By the way, this PA down here is a public address system. If you've got like a speaker in the front of your car, you can use this as a PA. That can be disabled in software, which I have done. Okay, so upper sideband is what we would normally use. Now watch this. I'm going to change that using the clarifier, which I've set for 1 kilohertz segments, but it only goes up a certain amount before it drops out. And the only way to get to the next frequency is by incrementing this by 1. Well, now notice if I go back to 1, it remembers where you left it. So you have to kind of figure out which starting point from these memories. These are, in fact, memories. This is not a VFO. This is the thing right here that can change it. And you can change this in the software so that it's 0.1 or 1 kilohertz, or 0.1 kilohertz, which is 100 hertz. If you're using CW, you undoubtedly are going to want to change this to the 100 hertz setting over here. So in order to tune across the band, you go up 1 notch, tune, okay, go up a notch, tune some more, okay, and you can see the difficulty where this would be impossible to do when mobile if you're tuning around the band. You just can't. Here is the monster big difference between ham radio and CB. CB is channelized. There are 40 frequencies. that are set, and you put them in a memory like this, and you just switch between them by hitting the button. This has been modified in firmware to go up to 60. Now, the thing is, CB radio has a series of 40 discrete frequencies. Now, you can operate upper sideband, lower sideband, do all kinds of strange things on there, and that's fine. But ham radio is not channelized. Now, with the new radios, like in the past 20 years, that have been out on the market, usually people find a 1 kilohertz marker in order to start their band. Sometimes if it's 2, they'll go to 2.5 and split a 5 kilohertz channel. Okay, if you tune this the way it is, 5 kilohertz at a time, you are going to miss a lot of stations entirely. You'll jump right over them because ham radio signals are only 3 kilohertz wide. So it is entirely possible to skip right over a station and not hear it at all. It would be better if this were changed right here to 1 kilohertz steps, or maybe 2. Then you could tune across here, and when you find something, just reach over for the clarifier to bring it in real nice and clear. But the way this is set up, this needs to be changed, okay? Now, this right here, you'll probably memorize very quickly, A and B and C. This is partitioning the band into 6 parts. There's nothing wrong with that. That works just fine. Your mode control's over here, and we use upper sideband, or we will use CW. Now, I mentioned something on CW. This only works with a straight key. It does not work with iambic paddles, just a straight key, and there are no keyer memories. So if you want to use a keyer with it, it'll have to be external and then plug into the back. I recently reviewed a keyer that was about $30 that you can use not only to practice your iambic keying, but also use to key a radio, and I demonstrate how that would work on this. Now, the ICOM, of course, has a keyer built in, as do all radios these days. Now, what I would like to do, let's just go through a couple things here. Some of the menu items are pretty opaque. Comes with the programming cable, which I have right here. It is not USB-C. Okay, so before we get into some of the things having to do with programming the machine, this is a printout of the spectral purity, and it goes all the way up to a stop frequency of 450 megahertz. It starts at 1 megahertz, okay? This is very clean. This is nice. This is sending a CW signal that's just called no harmonics. Very nice. I congratulate them on how well they made this radio for that. If you want to get one of these, you can on Amazon, $243. But this shows the radio, also shows it with an antenna. It comes with a 10-meter antenna, which I haven't reviewed yet. I will review that separately. And it shows all the different buttons. Unfortunately, this does not give much information about the fact that it's how you go about tuning frequencies. So it goes at every 5 kilohertz. But if you want 191, you can't get there from there. It'll be just too hard to work with. Now, I checked the FCC listing. Okay, it does exist on the FCC database. It's Shenzhen Yiser Technology Company in, and it goes way out here to Shenzhen, okay? And this is what's in that record. These are all the usual things that you would think would be in a record. So this has been FCC reviewed. Now, what has been reviewed is the documentation. The FCC did not do these tests. These tests were done by a lab in China that the FCC has an arrangement with. Now let's look at the programming. Programming looks like it's some sort of a handheld or something. each one of these is 5 kilohertz apart, all the way down, and it goes down to 60. There are 60 of these. Emergency channel 9, guess where this came from. Okay, but the frequency band is 28 to 29.7, which is the amateur band. This is for band A, here, whatever that means. Now, you can change these if you want. For example, if you wanted to make some of these FM repeater, you could do something. Note the echo is enabled on every frequency. I've disabled the echo across everything. I don't know what these are for. Okay, not sure what high cut is. These are not explained in the manual. RB, I don't know what that is. You can add to the scan if you want them to. You can put the CTCSS codes or the DCS codes in every memory too, so you can use it for the 3 repeater channels. Now, you can also look at the parameters inside. I left mic gain at 41. Monitor gain is where you can hear yourself. If, like, for example, you've got a headset, it's nice to do that. Timeout timer is set for only 3 minutes. I'd make that larger. RB frequency, 1050. RB time, 500 milliseconds, that's half a second. CW side tone, I changed this from 1050 to 700 hertz to match the more commonly used 700 hertz in the United States. Frequency step, this is the step that is on the clarifier knob. You can change this to a variety of different things. If you want this, you're going to listen to single sideband, I would change this maybe to 0.1 kilohertz or 100 hertz, and you can get in right nicely on the station. If you're going to do CW, you might want to take that down to 10 hertz. The LCD display is on. I have no idea why you'd turn it off. The scan mode is a squelch scan, meaning if it breaks this squelch, it'll hold on there. Scan resume times, 5 seconds. LCD display in transmit, it will display the transmitted frequency. This is if you are operating split for some reason in one of those frequencies. Okay, SWR protect value 10. 10 is a really high SWR. I'd be very tempted to lower that. The battery voltage that it'll operate 9 to 16. Okay, so this is suited for a mobile type environment. No, normally you'd be giving it 13.8, or as I have it over here, this is a lithium-ion battery. This says 12.8 volts. That's baloney. It's more like 13.4. Okay, so FM, AM squelches, squelch close delays for the rest of the modes. The single tone is for certain repeaters in Europe. Clarifier mode. Do you want to just change the receiver frequency, just the transmitter frequency, or the frequency of the whole unit? You want the frequency of the whole unit. So you set that on receive/transmit frequency. Now, the push mode is a step frequency. I haven't figured out how to use that one. CW side volume. Note that it creates a CW side tone. You're not actually listening to the output of the transmitter, okay? Beep volume. Mic type dynamic. There's a different one you can use. Over here, I disabled PA. Public address system is, it'd be really hard to find a use case in ham radio. Okay, CW protect enable, DC voltage protect, and so on are the things that you find in the paperwork. Okay, now this thing does come with a mounting bar that you could like put it up. See how I have my UHF VHF base station up here. It's on a bracket. It's underneath the shelf, so it's up and out of the way. You could do the same thing with this. Now, there is no bail. See this down here? This comes down so that it'll hold the front of the radio up. I'm doing that with a dry erase marker to hold it up enough so that I can see it. If you do have it right in front of you, you're going to want to tilt it so that you can get something that you can use. I mentioned that I had a conversation with somebody it was VE7, it was in Canada, and this fellow was activating a park as part of the POTA, or Parks on the Air program, and I was able to snag him, so I'll be in his log. Now, finally, let's turn to Retevis's reaction to my original video. In the original video, I was really unhappy with a lot of these features, and I said so. And so I said, this thing is so far from satisfactory, I'm going to let Retevis have a look at this, because normally I don't do that. I'll review it, give it my honest opinion, put it up on the air, and I'll give you my honest summary. This is from Retevis PR, and it's from Inez, I-N-E with a backwards accent, and S from Retevis PR. Now, this to me means that whoever watched the video didn't understand the English associated with it, and some of the things they wanted to say, we're going to have to interpret between the lines in the English to see what it has to say. It says, "Dear Dave, my dear friend, we are very sorry to hear your expression. I think what that means is we're very sorry to hear of your disappointment. It was with great sincerity." Sincerity is a very important word in Chinese. It's a fundamental value that all people must have, is that they're sincere. They don't go in for the satire and stuff like that that we do. It was with great sincerity, meaning that they were trying very hard, that we worked with you and tried our best to provide you with maximum support and assistance. That is not true, because I sent them a question and they never responded. We have received a lot of praise and love for this radio from consumers before you. Now, given that this hasn't quite been released yet, it's not on their website, I don't see how this could be. Now, if this were set up as a CB radio, and you're just reaching down here and changing channels, little touch of the clarifier, something like that for single sideband, yeah, it'd probably work really well. And the echo mode does work. I tried it. It sounds just like a reverb. No place on the ham bands. Disable it. Okay? He says, we've received lots of praise and love for this radio for consumers before you. And to be honest, in other words, he's going to tell me something he doesn't think I'm going to like. The issues that you mentioned in your video were not what we expected. Well, that's why I reviewed it, so you'd learn some things. After receiving your email, I contacted our technical engineers and tried to give you a relatively satisfactory answer. Number one, in the video, you mentioned that turning the knob will produce a beep. Indeed, this is a system setting of this product which cannot be turned off. Find a way to turn it off. It should not be that way when you're doing general tuning. Okay? From another point of view, is it not more convenient to refer to the change of the frequency adjustment value? Is not it, my dear friend? No. Get rid of that beep on this right here. You don't do that when you're changing frequencies. Now, if you want to leave the detent in, I have no objection with that. Just making it smoothly turning could create a real problem. Okay, tuning issues. This radio can choose 10 hertz, 100 hertz, 1 kilohertz, 10 kilohertz. Really not as accurate as some mature ham HF radio adjustment. I have no concerns with the accuracy here. This suggestion has been included in the company's product database. The future I consider improving and optimizing. In other words, it's in the list for the techies to do something with. There is an echo in the video. There was an example of the echo mode which I made and then promptly said that's not acceptable on ham radio. I was transmitting into a dummy load. Now, he says there's an echo in the video. Yes. We guess you have turned the echo button. Well, yeah. And you can try to turn it off. I did. And I said you should turn it off. And in fact, what I showed you on the software, or you can go in directly via a memory, you can turn that off. Turn it off, leave it off. Anyone who's using that echo button is not, to use the Chinese word, sincerely operating as a ham radio operator. Okay, the issue of only one main channel, CW transmits intermittent signals. Now, I showed on this, in the original video, that when I tap the Morse code key, strange things can happen to the first dit. Okay? So you might, if you're doing something, put something in prior to your first. Normally you start out with Find Business or something like that. Just do like did and then start with Find Business, and the timing will take care of itself. Okay? The thing that I am concerned with and am very disappointed is that there's no keyer. I cannot key it with my iambic paddles without a separate keyer. That's 20 years out of date. 5, we are considering to launch a new firmware to make up for the shortcomings of the product. And that's fine. All radios do that these days. Last but not least, as you mentioned in the video, the product parameters are within reasonable and compliant limits. He's talking about this limit right here. Very good right there. Much better transmitter than I've seen on a lot of handhelds. We've always been committed to maximizing the functionality of our products while minimizing the cost. He's reading out of the PR handbook here. I'm sorry, that was an insincere statement because I was trying to be sarcastic, but it does sound very much like market speak. As an entry-level ham radio, we did incorporate some of the CB's features with the goal of providing our users with a 2-in-1 exceptional experience. No, this radio is ham radio only. It is not a CB radio. CB is entirely a separate service. It has its own culture, its own habits, its own processes and parameters, and this is not trying to give us, should not be trying to give us, a CB type experience in here. However, it is difficult to satisfy everyone's preferences. Yeah, impossible. And we fully understand your expectations of the Retevis brand. I really was expecting something pretty cool because previous Retevis radios that I've worked with have been excellent. And we are accelerating the pace of development improvement so that we can respond to the expectations and concerns of our users faster and better. But Rome wasn't built in a day. As you similarly said in the video, we still have a long ways to go, but please join us in holding hands to create some even more amazing products. Okay. Now, the pattern of communications between us is via YouTube videos, okay? YouTube is, as I understand it, not generally allowed in China, so it would be very hard for, I'm wondering about the staff here, if they were actually able to look at my video or if they had to get it sent in by some other means if it got chopped up. Regarding this video, we would be grateful if you could unpublish it. I never did publish it. I made it an unlisted video, and there were so many things I had heartburn with that I thought I'd give them a chance to respond. And I am reading to you their entire response, okay? So you'll see that I really am considering what they have to say. It says, we would be grateful if you could unpublish it, and you can keep this product for yourself to try it out, of course. You can also return the product. We will bear the shipping cost. And after other new products are released in the near future, we will send you the new products to evaluate and experience what you think. Well, yes, I'm always happy. Like I said, the HD1 and the HD2 were just outstanding radios. I hope to hear back from you soon, our faithful and reliable old friend. Now, that may sound to an English-speaking person as something really weird, but that is pretty well standard ways that Chinese would greet each other. So this is not sarcastic. Again, Chinese want to be sincere. They don't indulge in sarcasm. So don't read any of this as sarcastic. Best regards, Inez, Retevis PR. Okay, very good. I'd like to show you how this should work, but instead of showing you this on a Japanese radio, that's not a fair conclusion. Let's do it on a Chinese radio. This is the Xiegu G90. And this is a very popular radio here in the United States. Okay, let's turn it on. Now this has memories too. So if you want to go to like a favorite net frequency or whatever. Okay, this is the Xiegu. It's on 10 meters, 28,400. Now watch this. It goes up by 1 kilohertz. 415, 416, 417. If you want to tune even lower, you can go by hundreds of hertz, by 10 hertz, okay? Or if you really want to get up and down the band fast, you can do it by 100 hertz or something in there to get where you may want to go very quickly. And that's the tuning. That's all that's involved in the tuning. In other words, it's got a step size that just comes from pushing on the tuning knob, and it highlights the one that it's for. If I were hunting for single sideband signals, I think I'd put it on the kilohertz, and that way I will find the signals. Okay, and if I have to tune in a little bit more, I'll just come over here and tune in a little bit to get it exact, okay? Chinese radio, okay guys, it has been done. Note that there were no clicks, no beeps, no having to go back and forth between knobs, no having to choose a particular range of the very wide 10-meter band. It's all put in there, and that tuning method has been with us in HF radios since before World War II. And we'll put that in terms of the Long March. It's been there before the Long March. This way of tuning frequencies has had more than a century behind it of the way it should be done. And this adaptation over here that uses 3 different knobs to tune the radio needs to be reduced to something like this. Now, that may require more than a simple firmware change. Okay, it's your business, not mine. I would recommend this radio to a technician who's thinking about getting their General, but has not, made the upgrade yet. A technician can use this radio fully in accordance with Part 97 of the FCC rules. Can use this fully. It is 3 different knobs to tune, okay? It does not easily tune across the band like this Saigu does, okay? So that is the objection I have to this. Do not use this in a mobile environment. It is too dangerous trying to get between these knobs. In a base station environment, this would work because you can really concentrate on them. And then when you get your general purpose HF receiver, you'll go, boy, how much easier is it now? Okay. Is there room for memories on a radio like this? The answer is yes. Certainly for the FM repeaters. There's only 3 FM channels on 10 meters. You can have memories for that, or your favorite net, or something like that. But the way it is now with 1, 2, 3 knobs that you have to position to tune in a signal is in some senses going back to the 1920s, 100 years ago, when the superhet radios were first coming out, and you really did have to turn 3 knobs to tune in a frequency properly. Very shortly after that, by the end of the 1920s, they were combining all those capacitors on a single stator, and you just turned one thing and it tuned everything. It tuned the RF amp, tuned the IF amp, and tuned the detector. Okay? So, I wish that this had not been so hard to tune. Otherwise, I would recommend it without an issue to techs who want to play with 10 meters. Now, 10 meters is going to be open for another year and a half, until you finally get to the point where it comes back down to very little, okay? If I have created a misunderstanding with Ailunce, I apologize, but what I'm trying to do is, as a radio reviewer with over 1,100 videos already up, I think I know a thing or two about ham radio, and I am suggesting some changes to you that I really seriously suggest you take as something that you ought to do. And then you could have a really good product and get it out there to all the different people. It's not that expensive a radio, it's about $450. I run it off a battery or you can use your normal station power supply, or whatever you do want a 10-meter antenna with this. Note, 10-meter FM is vertically polarized. All the other bands are very often horizontally polarized, although it's not as firm a practice as it is on 2 meters. 2 meters FM for everything, horizontal for everything else. So there you have it. If you would like to help this channel keep going, please go to patreon.com/KE0OG and whatever works for you. So please subscribe, click like, ring the bell, all those other things like that. And then until we next meet, 73.